Okay, this is English 201, week 6, part 5. We are going to start the final section of Kafka's Metamorphosis. I realize you all probably hate this story. I don't know. My students they just, I think my students really want happier stuff, and I really fuck them up by giving them just depressing shit. But it's interesting, depressing shit, I think. Also, I just think something this well written can never be depressing. Um, I don't know. Like sad music is something people enjoy. I don't know. Let's a tragedy is a genre. We're just not interested in it as a genre, but I think it's interesting. Actually, hey, you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say this. If you all took 101 last semester, or most of you took 101 last semester, which is why you're in 201 this semester, and you had those readings about happiness. And one of the readings, Berkman, I guess it was Berkman. And Berkman's point was that Americans are like constantly obsessed with happiness and thinking about positive things all the time. And that ironically, irony, um, ironically, um, trying to focus on the positive actually makes people less happy. Because you need to spend some time thinking about sad things, and that actually prepares you to deal with your life. That was one of the points of that essay. I didn't even really like it that much. I'm surprised to be mentioning it so much this semester, but it does address Kafka because I think people want to focus on the positive and think about happy thoughts all the time. And Berkman's point is that that leaves so many people disappointed all the time. And they put pressure on themselves to be happy and only focus on success. And if something goes wrong, it's your fault. But they don't, if you spend some time thinking about darker things and sadder things, it actually might make you feel better. For example, just because something terrible happens doesn't mean it was your fault. Gregor Samsa is a great example of that. Um, yeah, okay, well, I'm feeling good about it, so we're doing it right. All right, this is 201, week 6, part 5. Okay, so let's as we keeping that in mind, let's head towards the conclusion of this piece. I mean, maybe doing a little bit more. I have some one-page Kafka stories I might want to talk about, but we'll see. I feel like because I'm sensing that this is going to end before I'm ready to go into Shakespeare, so I'm going to do some extra stuff in here. But let's take a look at it. Um, for starters, we've got. So I'm just going to grab this quote. This is, I think, a really important quote. On the contrary, as a family, there was a duty to swallow any revulsion and be patient. Just be patient. So the father, attacked him and threw an apple that got lodged in his back, and he's in a lot of pain. And this causes the family to realize um, that it is their duty to swallow revulsion and be patient. Just be patient. Um, it's a little bit of irony there. It's hard to see. It's a tougher kind of irony. It's a gentler irony, but it's there. Um, the it's tough. The it's okay if you don't see why that's ironic. It's ironic because sometimes I'm like, you better be able to see why it's ironic. But this is not one of those times. It's ironic because it sounds nice. They felt that the father attacked Gregor, and they realize they've made a mistake, and they realize it's their duty to like keep their revulsion to themselves and try to be patient. This is ironic because it is in contrast with what I think their actual duty is, which is to love their child. And those are two very different things. It sounds nice because it's an improvement. Gregor's father, 5 seconds ago, was trying to kill him. And now his father and the rest of the family has realized they must swallow their revulsion and be patient. They realize they shouldn't be so hard. It is their duty to swallow their revulsion and be patient. It's their duty to love their child. And they're not doing that. And the fact that they think keeping their revulsion inside and being patient is like a good thing. That's how a stranger should treat another stranger. This is their child. This is their brother. Like, who that you have a bigger duty than that. I would argue that you have a duty to love even more people than just in your family. But they're not they're like, the irony is that they're almost like proud of themselves for being like, you know what, I've learned a lesson here. I'm going to try to notice they're not like stop feeling revulsion. They don't feel like they need to work on themselves so they're not horrified by their own child. They're just like, I got to keep that in here. I'm going to be a good person from now on. And instead of being outwardly disgusted by my son, I'm going to keep how disgusted I am by him inside and not let him know. That's being a good person. No, it's not. Being a good person is loving someone even though they don't have the kind of body that you would like them to have. Um, it's yeah. God, there's probably something even to be written in here about fat shaming and how fat people disturb folks, and they feel revulsion, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not even going to show how disgusted I am by a fat person." Like, you shouldn't be disgusted by fat people at all. Like, why don't you stop being a jerk? Don't treat people badly because of the shape of their body. Um, anyway, there's a lot. This is why I like this story, because it works. The bug metaphor works on so many levels because they treat him, they're so horrified by him. And there's so many situations where a normal family is horrified by one child having a different body, or being queer or whatever, or being fat, or being um, trans, or being ill, or being deformed, or right. And there's so many things, and this works for like all of them. It works for there's a host of metaphors floating around here. I think it's really interesting. Um, Okay. It says, by the way, and this is one of those moments. This is not as exciting because I've already talked about this. But again, right here, it says he had been reduced to the condition of an ancient invalid, meaning like an old person who's quite sick. Now we've already pointed out the sickness metaphor, so there's not a whole lot to do here. But if you were reading the story and let's say earlier Greta had picked up the bowl with a rag and not with a shoe. No, I'm sorry. Greta had entered his room as if it was the room of a person who was seriously ill, and I said that is a moment that you should notice and be like, wait a minute, is being a bug a metaphor for serious illness? If you missed it there, this is a second chance, that he'd been reduced to the condition of an ancient invalid. He'd be like a sick old man. Hey, is this story a metaphor for growing old and getting sick, that you used to be able to provide for your family and now you need help? Um, it does sort of work as a metaphor for that because there are similarities. And those are the areas where you can start building metaphor, and doing bigger and more interesting things. Okay, cool. So on page 14, um, they got jobs, right? The father has a job in a uniform. The mother sews underwear from a fashion shop. The sister took a sales job. Um, uh, and I guess the point with the jobs thing is kind of shocking to me. All three of them have jobs. Um, this is upsetting because Gregor worked at a job that he hated to take care of his family. And it wasn't his fault. His father messed up his own business and fell into debt, and Gregor took on this job to pay his family's debts and to take care of them. But they all could have been working this whole time, which would have made Gregor's life so much easier. It didn't. The situation where the story opens, where Gregor is taking care of all three people, didn't have to be like that. If all four of them had been working, I guess, do you think Gregor's full-time job, Gregor wouldn't have had to have a terrible full-time job. What if all four of them just had to have a part-time job, right? Like that maybe could have brought in the same amount of money. So, or they could, all four of them have had full-time jobs, but then they would get out of debt faster, and Gregor wouldn't have to be chained to this job that he hates for so long. Um, so they kind of doubly screwed Gregor over. They had a bunch of money saved away that they could have used to pay off their debts and release Gregor, but they kept it to themselves. But they could have been working the whole fucking time. I think from the beginning you feel like, oh, they couldn't have been working because the girl is too young and the mother's father are too old and he's supposed to be retired. But they clearly they can't work. So they could have worked and they could have helped Gregor, and they just didn't. They were just selfish. They just lived off his money, and then when he disappeared, then they went out and got a job. But they should have gotten a job in the first place to help on Gregor. All right. Um, Also, you remember I was really interested in that line where they said, where the chief clerk in the beginning says, we recognize that there are some times when it is hard to do business, but there can never be a moment when business stops. We cannot allow there to be. You see the same thing here. He doesn't take his uniform off at home, the father. He remains fully dressed as if always ready to serve and expecting to hear the voice of a superior even here. It's that same idea that you have to work, 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 work all the time and constantly. Um, and it used to be Gregor's thing, but now it's Gregor's father's thing. All right, I'll pick it up in the next video.